here we are, your faculty -1 of the Leadership Through Facilitation course on the Never Done Before Facilitation Academy platform. And we are so excited and so proud because we just concluded our first cohort, which was incredible. Yay. And yes, in preparation for our next cohort, we wanted to talk about some of the big things that came up during our first cohort. And one of those that we're going to start the next part of our series with is the theme of emergence in facilitation. And so just in case you don't know me, I'm Kate. I'm based in Berlin. I'm a freelance facilitator. Miriam, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Miriam. I'm based in Amsterdam. I'm the founder of Never Done Before. Happy to be here.
Yeah.
Shamir, do you want to go next? You're below me.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Shamir Joseph. I'm normally calling in from Mumbai, but this time I am calling in from New Jersey. And really happy to see everyone here.
Not so different, really.
Good to see everyone again. I'm really excited about another LinkedIn Live with this group. So I'm Flor, based in Portugal. And as Kate said, super excited that we're celebrating our closing of our first cohort and the opening of a next one.
Yes. All right. Thanks, everybody. So one of the rituals that we started in the previous cohort during our Q&A sessions is doing a round where each participant submits a question of what's on their mind for the particular topic at hand. And so we wanted to start using that for ourselves too. So the question is, what question is on each one of our minds, those of us in the group, about emergence? So what would you like to know from each, what will we like to know from each other? And of course, for anybody out there in LinkedIn land, please drop your questions for us in the chat at any time. So I'm going to nominate Flor.
I think I have one of those they call wicked questions, which we might never find the perfect answer for, which is one where we will continue to go. So it's a lot about how can we design to let things emerge? And mostly, how do we not stand in the way of emergence as facilitators?
All right. How do we design for emergence and how do we not get in the way?
Exactly.
Gorgeous.
And I love that. And maybe similar but still different nuance. I would love to explore the difference between facilitating emergence versus emergent facilitation.
Nice.
Interesting topic. I think one of them is also the personal journey that a facilitator or person who finds themselves facilitating has to go through to be okay with emergence. Because that itself is a whole personal journey, and for facilitators and even for leaders, in fact, which is why our course is called Leadership Through Facilitation. Being okay with emergence is a whole different thing. And then there's a whole other ball game of how do we actually design for emergence intentionally, and what we put in along that way, those breadcrumbs to actually allow emergence to happen. And when it happens, how do we feel about it and be okay with that feeling? So that's what I'd like to talk about as well.
Beautiful. And the disadvantage to going last in this round is that you all took all my questions. My biggest one, though, was related to Shamir, which is how do we maintain confidence during this process of designing and then working with emergence? But because that would be cheating, I'm going to start with a different question. Why? Why do it to begin with? Why do we want this?
You mean emergence?
Mm-hmm. And while we're at it, maybe define what it is.
I love definitions. I love setting boundaries. I just learned in a podcast interview that I'm a water person, so I do need boundaries. So here we go. Emergence as opposed to structure or limitations. So from when I think of emergence is that the moment we step into the room and ask a question, something happens that we could not predict. So there is something to emerge in the space. And I think there are some topics or contexts or purposes of group collaborative processes that require more emergence than others. So why emergence? I think because it allows us to be flexible for whatever the group really needs. And then I think also, when is it not needed to be emergent?
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges that I'm seeing in this is that a lot of times we put this emergence versus structure, whereas I don't think the opposite of emergence is structure, because I think sometimes structure can actually enable emergence. So I think I'm always thinking, what's the opposite of emergence? And I think it's a bit more what you said, Miriam, like, is this predefined outcome? So if I take the metaphor of like taking a group on a hike in the woods, if I have every step mapped out and every stop mapped out, and I know exactly where the beautiful waterfall is and where the nice tree is, this can be a very beautiful walk. So and there's no missing out on anything because everything is organized. Emergence would be letting space for deciding on a crossroad. Do we go left? Do we go right? Do we go? Do we stay a bit longer somewhere? Do we sometimes follow our intuition in this route? And then that doesn't mean I don't have structure, because I have that preparedness to allow them to make those decisions, or to get lost because we got some extra supplies, or to get lost and somebody, and stay for the night because we got our torches. So I think there's something about the opposite of emergent being predefined plan, predefined outcome, and emergence being space to see what else comes up. And structure for me can enable both, actually.
Such a good point.
I love that. I love your analogies, always, Fleur, and those imageries. But I really think it is a spectrum. But there is the whole, emergent side of it, which is fully emergent, where you don't know what's going to happen, an open space sort of thing. And then you have the structure, and a friend and colleague of mine, he likes to call it, he uses this term, freedom within structure. And I really love it, because I really think that's what it is. And we're often playing with how much structure we want to put versus how much we want to take away and let freedom take over. And I think in true emergence, in workshops, in sessions that we're doing, whether it's even training or if it's even a fully process facilitation, we are using that spectrum, because we are at points deciding when we want to give the group and let them truly build something together. But then when we want to bring in the structure, because it has to fit with what the purpose or the outcome is of what they're trying to do in that session. So that's when the structure helps with the emergence part of it. But then sometimes we just want to help them diverge. We want to help them build. We want to let go of that. We take that away. Or even the structure of it allows for more emergence. So it really is what we're trying to create in that room, and how does emergence play into it. And as a facilitator, or even as a content, a person who is, like, for my context, when I'm bringing in design thinking, we have certain biases because we've done it many times. We think this is the right answer. How are we okay with sometimes, they're not going to that answer, but they're going somewhere else. And that's really beautiful. Maybe it's that tree that you've always seen, it's perfect. But if you're not okay, but if you are always going there, maybe you want to go to some other part, you discover this other beautiful open space that you would have never discovered if we always keep going to that particular path that we're on, just to continue that beautiful analogy again.
So, okay. So actually kind of what you already mentioned, sometimes it's easier to say what the opposite of something is. And for me, the opposite of emergence is actually extinction. So on a system level, which also relates to my why, which is if we are not emerging and adapting, then then it's over. So to put it bluntly. And so that's, yeah. So when I think about emergence, I always think about, the earth and what is coming from the earth and cycles and, how nature will adapt, and we must too. So if we're going to stick around. So for me, the why is both it's on several levels. So it's on a personal level. So how are we adapting to our environments all the time? What is emerging when we are open? How does that impact our networks? And by networks, I mean just the connections that we share among ourselves, and then at an organization, the networks that are more and more resilient, the more we offer opportunities for people to connect and these new ideas to emerge that you mentioned, Shamir, which then makes organizations more resilient, right? And that gets to the very big why. So, Andrea mentioned buzzwords. VUCA is another one of them, right? The volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous circumstances we're all living in. And businesses are trying to operate in, and oftentimes that's why we're brought in as facilitators to help them navigate that. And so, yeah, by building, and if they really want to survive, they need to offer chances for these networks to be made, the connections to be made, and then that all comes down to how we design for that. Yeah.
And would this then be emergent facilitation or facilitating for emergence? Or are these the same things? Because I think facilitating for emergence is creating the structures or designing a structure that allows emergence that we couldn't have seen to create or to prompt the magic that Shamir was mentioning and you were building on, Kate. And then emerging facilitation is almost, for me, is then working with less predefined structures, because you work with what is, and then it's letting go of structure and control, which is then also very much maybe attached to our facilitation style or our level of comfort, presence, and power.
Yeah.
Leadership.
I'd also add one more element to that letting go of that power. It also takes a lot of humility for a leader or someone or a facilitator in the room to do. Say, hey, while I might have a lot of years of experience in certain kind of work, which is why you brought me here, I might have certain thoughts, or as a leader of the organization, I think this is the pathway we want to go. But I want to create true emergence from the group, because it also helps with group ownership of an idea, change movements, right? These things, obviously it has its benefits when it emerges, but it also takes time. And that time factor, when you bring into emergence in organizations, they're always struggling with. As a leader, to be humble and say, I do not know the answers, or at least I have an answer. I don't know if it's the answer. And so we're going to create this space of emergence. It takes a lot of humility from the facilitator, from that leader, to allow for that. And then when they're hearing ideas that are different from them, be okay with it, because that's what the group is. And not come in and then say, okay, wait, but I'm going to put my point ahead because this is what I think is the right answer. Right? So how do we step in, and how do those things play out when we are talking about emergence and designing for emergence and that emergent facilitator?
And it almost comes to this question, the why. So if you think about why emergence, right? Why have emergence or stimulate emergence or design for emergence? Why wouldn't you, right? Why would you design for the predetermined path or the predetermined plan? Because there must be a benefit to that, because a lot of people do it, and a lot of leadership is based on following a predetermined plan made by leadership. And if you bring it back to that analogy, there is a point of following a predetermined plan, because you'll guarantee the beautiful waterfall, you'll guarantee the visit to the beautiful tree. There's so much in a predetermined plan that not only provides this sense of control, sometimes based out of fear, but there's also a benefit in saying, we've done this, it works. So I think we also need to sort of take it out of this demonized setup, like, oh, but if you predetermine, if you set up a plan, it's bad because you're trying to control it. Sometimes there is also something beautiful in that, saying it'll help people take the first step. It'll help people to see what is possible. So for me, it's a lot about this balance. And I wouldn't want facilitators, at least, to feel pressured to always only let everything emerge. I think it's really this pendulum that goes back and forth. And as long as it's not done out of control or fear, you can definitely benefit also from both emergence and predetermined plans as well.
No. Yeah, I agree. And for me, we already said it. Like, there are structures, even open space, which we just mentioned was highly emergent. That's a structure, right? Mm-hmm. And so, Miriam, you said at the start, you are a water person and therefore need some structures. And I think it's a very human thing, right? And so, I definitely don't want to demonize it. And to tie back to another conversation that we had previously, this predetermined outcome was, of course, Facilitation.
Yes.
From last season. So this is a thing, though. So we are in this dynamic shift in how people are working. This desire in certain circumstances to be agile with a big and small a. And so then, but with all changes comes stress and conflict, right? And so, and for our participants and also our stakeholders, right? The people who are bringing us in, how do you all prepare them for and sell this idea, right? So if you sell the idea of not necessarily, or that transitioning into a more emergent way, if this is desired, how do you sell this idea? And then we can maybe segue into the design for the participants themselves. How do you ease them into it if it's a new way?
So your first question is about how you sell this to the leadership or the client or the. Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Who maybe would like you to facilitate towards a specific outcome. Yeah. I think that there's two movements that support that. One is that there is a general movement, I feel, in the world, society, towards more emergence and more confidence in co-creation, leveraging diversity, actually hearing what people have to say. So there is a natural tendency. That's also why facilitation is becoming more important, because a lot of people are saying, I don't know this answer to this very complex problem without involving everybody else, whether it's at an organizational level or at society level. So that is a trend that I feel that in general is helping us. I have more clients coming to me seeking co-creation than before, and actually already saying, no, this can't be just me doing a presentation. Whereas maybe 5-6 years ago, it was much more presentations and panels. And so on the other side of that is also to say, we can still have within Emergence guiding principles. We can still have, and actually we need to have limitations, because Emergence without limitations and structure becomes extremely chaotic. And that's not even pleasurable for the participants. And it's not something that will actually solve that problem that you're trying to solve together. So I think as soon as you can show that good structure, good process actually enables productive emergence, people generally tend to be more confident and more on board with it. And again, because society is moving towards that, a lot of people will have seen it happen already before. So I have a lot of clients referring to other facilitated processes where they say, we did this and then this happened, so I'd love to see that again. So it's not so new anymore that people don't know what you're talking about when you're talking about emergence or co-creation. So.
And on the other hand, so this is on the one end of the spectrum, the clients that are actually asking for co-design and hence might be more open to emergence. On the other side of the spectrum are still those who want to keep control, who want to have an agenda, who want to deliver their presentation at the start, and might feel nervous around emergence and too much happening on spot. And I think in this case, it's, for me at least, very important to have close conversations with the client, so to build that trust and to give them as much control as they need, so that within the structure we can keep a small space of emergence so that they control the big picture. So for instance, one extreme would be open. We start with an open space, so all the topics that will be discussed at a workshop come up during the time of the workshop. Very emergent. Otherwise, we could say, okay, we have a long list of 10 topics, and out of these 10 topics at the event, participants choose the most interesting 3. So this would be a little bit of emergence within a structure that might feel more comfortable to a client as well, to guide them into the concept of more emergence and more participatory, maybe, design in group work.
And I think there's also, with that trust, is helping them sort of revealing the curtain, but not too much, on what emergence does. But then also the breadcrumbs that we're leaving in the process for that emergence to be enabled. So when we explain to clients to help them see it, there's often that, okay, so this part of the process is basically talking about, if you take the same example that Miriam, you were mentioning, which is, we talk about what are the emerging topics that we all are on top of our mind. Then the next part of the process is, from the group, while they have decided this, what is then something that we can talk about now that fits within this time limits? That's what it is. Then the next part is, what can we do with it? What information do we have around this? How do we dissect that information? That's what the next part is. So helping them see the process of emergence while not committing to that this will take certain time, this will not, because we do not know. And if we're going more on the spectrum of emergence, we will see where the conversation is, taking a bit of that structure of it is time bound to only this much, and when in fact it might be more, because that's what's emerging and that's what needs to happen. We let the client know that those important checkpoints on our beautiful trek in the mountains are happening, right? It might take a little longer, that's fine, but it is happening. As long as those checkpoints are there, and at the end, we will have that beautiful question, we will have that beautiful output that's needed. So helping the client know that even though they might not see everything, those checkpoints are happening, and that's when they start to see those checkpoints. I've heard clients come up to me in the middle and say, "Hey, you're talking about this. I remember it's showing up, and people are talking about it." Right? So it is. So they have the confidence, because from a client's point of view, they also need that confidence that it is happening. Right? They're also invested in this. So there is that personal self-talk that's happening within them about during the session, which we need to be aware of, because they are also a person that we're serving, not just the participants. Right? They are also in that purpose that we talk about. So it is that sort of thing, helping them see those checkpoints, and then later on they come to it, and then in the next engagement, there is more trust in our process, right? There is more, yes, okay, that changes the culture over time on how they accept emergence, how they accept that ambiguity, being okay with ambiguity, right? That sort of thing. It's a big theme to have.
And what comes to my mind listening to Shamir is also the participants. So yes, emergence is in or outside of comfort for us, for the clients, but it's also for the participants. Mm-hmm. And I think to balance or to design also for these different personality types, how much structure or in advance knowledge, guidance do they need and want, and how much emergence throws them out of this groan zone into the panic zone is also important. And combined with that, and I think that's then something that is part of facilitation as a skill, is to ask the right questions that provide structure within emergence. Because we can ask questions that are so wide and so open that participants might get lost or lose themselves or the topic, or so constrained that there is nothing to emerge, but only problems to solve and boxes to tick. So what is the right question that we ask a group to create emergence?
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes that question takes the form of an activity. So it's not literally a question, but it could be, a short reflection or visioning activity to get people used to thinking within a set of parameters, within a set of directions. However, in a very free way where there's no wrong answer, right? You don't need predetermined knowledge, right? And so we build a little bit of safety in that sense, and then ease people into, if we, after that, you follow up with like a little share, right? And then that starts the perspective sharing that eventually really injects the breathing room we need to start actually having new ideas come up.
And create the alignment that we need to then also converge on all the emergence. Because it's nice to emerge and to grow and to flow, but at some point you also need to converge.
Yes.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Flora, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. That again, that's why for me structure is not the opposite of emergence, like as we've been saying as well. I think actually, in order to emerge, and especially in bigger groups or in groups that might not have worked together before, your clear structures actually provide a lot of space for more pure emergence, right? And we've taken the open space dynamics already as an example. Open space is a very structured process, actually, right? It's open space never says, "Oh, what do you want to talk about?" Open space has a theme, has a guiding question. It has time slots. It has a structure that provides so that people know, oh, okay, so if I bring up a theme within this bigger question, I will have 45 minutes to discuss it. And there are rules even about who shows up and how you can move between the groups. So this structure provides such a safe space for things to emerge, because people don't have to worry about, am I in the right place? Am I saying the right thing? How long is this going to take? Where do I have to go? Who's going to? So all that is provided so that the brains are free to just have great conversations. And I think we underestimate sometimes how much anxiety we create when we don't have structure, especially for certain, let's put it like that, certain types of participants. And then we just say, oh, but how come people are not coming up with things? And that's mostly because we haven't provided enough safety for the brain just to start being creative. And that's something that I feel in these activities are actually very beautiful. You have zero predefined plan, but you are prepared and you're structured to deal with anything you need. So also as a facilitator, if you lack confidence to say, I don't really know how to deal with what comes up, make sure that you're prepared and that you have your toolbox full. And then whatever comes up, it'll be in a space that is both safe for you as well as for the participants to then work with it.
Yeah, I think the biggest threat to creativity and maybe to humanity is uncertainty. So yeah, there is an anxiety of uncertainty. So the more we can reduce uncertainty, the safer everyone will feel, and hence come up with nice ideas. And I think I was just wondering if someone in the audience now thinks, yeah, it's nice that you're discussing all these philosophical topics, but how can I learn that?
Yeah.
I was thinking of, the process module, where it's really about coming up with a meta structure. So how to design a workshop or a project or a day, and then have some sort of knowledge or prediction or of what will happen within this process and how to design for the emergence. And then combined with the people module, what are the dynamics that might or might not happen depending on which activity or prompt we are giving.
Yeah. I'd also add play here. Because if you think of the power of play, just playing in rooms, and not just talking about games, but the mindset of play allows, and there's a certain acceptance of emergence that is already perceived. Like, we're not going to worry about the outcome. We're just going to get into it. We're going to enjoy ourselves, and it'll figure it out. And that's the power of play, and that's why we talk about it, how we prepare teams for it. Even in the people model, we talk about what things people need to be okay, to understand what is their style, right? What are their thoughts around this? Because if there's someone who needs to know where we're going, so then we need a bit of structure to help them understand, okay, these are the checkpoints. But if there's someone who's ready to play and just like, okay, just let's go for it, right? They're all ready. And then you're explaining that structure. They're like, let's play already. Let's do this stuff. So managing for all those things, and why it's so great, in these modules we're talking about these things, is it allows for emergence as long as we understand who the people are talking about, what the purpose of it even is, what we're doing, but then also how, in this sense, play can be so powerful to enabling it in a very quick way that maybe other activities can, but need more time. That's the power of play in this.
No, I was thinking about it earlier. Actually, how lovely it is that so many of the frameworks that we put forth in the course can be applied to a conversation like this. So the circle of play, the magic circle that we use in the play module to talk about the context that people are coming from by the time they reach the point to which you're designing a playful exercise, what you design, what comes after within their context, but then further on in terms of their attitudes. This is, you could absolutely apply this to the idea of what it means to work in an emergent versus a top-down predictive environment. So yeah, thank you. You took the words right out of my mouth, Shamir. Yeah.
And what I would love to probe maybe the conversation in a different direction, maybe a little bit meta, but still, I would be curious. How did we apply the concept of emergence to the course in general? Because I think co-designing and co-facilitating a 7-module course with 6 and now 5 colleagues for a small group of participants, there is a dynamic happening in each of the modules that we have to take into consideration for the designing the next session. So there's also communication amongst us necessary. And to what extent do we allow for emergence within this course framework and between the different modules? When is it helpful? And when could it potentially be even be too disruptive?
Yeah. I think it's a beautiful question. And I think we've, in our analysis evaluations, already touched on some points about this, but this is especially relevant in learning processes, right? Because I think if you're facilitating co-creation or strategic planning or design thinking, you are always looking for emergence because that's what you're facilitating. In a learning environment, the balance is much more delicate because obviously there's content that you're going to bring, there's expertise that you're going to bring, so that determined path, that determined outcome is much more fixed. And there is less space for emergence because you don't know what's in the room, you don't know how that will benefit the learning process of other people. So I find, especially working with learning facilitators, that they have that challenge of how much do I let emerge versus how much do I bring. And I think we've touched on that topic many times when we are talking to each other about the design. So I think one thing was that we said, we are bringing our own expertise. We are bringing not only our frameworks, but also our stories. We are sometimes going to say, that's how it is, or that's how we think it is, which is a bit of a sort of predetermined path. At the same time, I felt we were able to adjust enough, and I hope I think we will also continue to do that, to the questions that came up, to the needs of the participants that they shared, because we had constant check-ins with participants about their expectations, about their questions, about what's still emerging for you, what is uncertain for you, so that were able to adapt the modules to that process. And I think especially in a process where we had the question and answer sessions as well as a complement, definitely helped to let that emergence continue in a little bit less structured, predetermined path. At the same time, we've had that discussion as well. If you are working with learners who don't know the whole path yet, they might come with not so much questions, but almost anxieties about, but how are we going to learn? What is it going to be? And for us then not to react to those anxieties with our own anxiety and adapting, that's really the balance. That's where you as a facilitator need to say, I'm not going to adjust based on fear or based on anxiety. I'm going to adjust where I feel that it would serve the group better, but the anxiety part, and I think that distinction is really fundamental. And I'm still learning that for sure. And I know others are as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's to respond to that, and then I'll get back to the course. So, I mean, this is what it is to stand in the discomfort, right? When we talk about like the grown zone, like we have to be there being the steady in the midst of it, so that our participants or our learners can stay in discomfort long enough to grow. So that, yeah, absolutely. And that's where, and by grow, I mean, as an individual, you grow and new things emerge for you. And when you're in a group or a network, this is when change happens on a system level. So we got to stand in it and be strong in it. And to get back to the course, to go along with this idea of building the journey that, meets people where they are, but then moves them along. I would say by the latter part of the course, Shamir and I were able to design some exercises that were highly emergent in that our participants get to design things on their own. And through that process, it's a huge process of self-discovery for them. So yeah, but had we started with that, with a group of people who didn't know each other yet, didn't know us yet, that would have been a big disservice to the learners and their journey. So,
Yeah, I mean, Kate, we literally said design for confusion at one point, right?
Yeah.
We literally put that in because we wanted
Spoiler alert.
It's so important, that trust that we built before it.
Yeah.
Yeah, also trusting the group, that they will, that they can also stand in the fire.
Yeah.
And I think that's the benefit. We had the discussion also in our post-mortem of the course, debriefing with the team of, okay, what is the balance between frameworks and theory in the course versus experiential learning, learning through experience and maybe co-creation and emergence. And I think since we are more on the emergent experiential side and less on the theory and model side, it also allows participants to really make it their own. And I think while some might need very clear frameworks and theories to feel in control, I think our course really speaks to those who already have experience in facilitation and now feel also confident enough, or maybe need the permission to break out of these standard models and theories to step into the emergence and hence leadership.
Yeah. And we also saw some who have been facilitating for quite some time, but like a lot of us are doing it mostly by intuition. And so by introducing enough theoretical underpinnings, that's also giving people the tools that they can say, okay, I've got tools now. I've got something that I can synthesize into something my own and work with it at any given time and apply it in lots of different situations. And so then that's where this confidence comes from. So it's the theory, the tools in your pocket, and then also having worked with them enough with a really awesome group to feel like you can step out and do it in the wild.
Shall we have a look at the modules actually? So what is the course about? Where'd you go? Here we go.
There you go.
There we go. We always start with the purpose, right? And I think important to say here is that every module is co-facilitated by a team of two. There will always be two For people that know, for play there will be 3. Yes, because play just needs more players. So we start with purpose, and it's not only the purpose, or there are different levels of purpose. The purpose of facilitation. So why do clients actually hire us, and how can we help them identify, and how can we help ourselves identify the real reason behind? And there step into leadership by guiding the clients to a place where they can really grow and trust us, but also the purpose in ourselves. So why are we here, and why are we stepping into the role of facilitators, and why does it make sense to step into the role of a leader? And from there we go to presence. Shamir.
Yes, and this presence is really about understanding yourself, understanding how do you show up in those spaces. But then once you understand it, once you get this wider picture of how your presence affects the room, how then can we play with the presence for certain outcomes? Because this is what the purpose is all about. And that's where it's a very self-aware module, because we understand how we show up in these different spaces. But it also is then, okay, so if we know this, how we then play with it with the intention of it. And that's where it tells us kind of power that we hold, that is not just through our words, but through these other things that we do with our presence. And it really gets into that aspect. And who are these people that we are talking about? And that's where the people part comes in. And Lauren,
Yes, and we're going to be in this specific module around people really looking at who's in the room. How do we categorize those people? Because, and not necessarily as in all continuously organizing them in subgroups, but what kind of people show up? How do we design for different learner types, different participant types? And then also, how do these people all interact with each other? So we look at the different ways that groups show up. We talk about group dynamics that can show up in terms of groupthink or other kinds of ways that the group can get in the way of itself, and also how to then intervene. So we look at really specific interventions on both individual participants as well as at the group level, and how you can work with that as well. To then go into what do we do with these people? How do we take them through? Kate.
Yeah, indeed. So, I mean, we've been talking a lot about it already. So, how are we conscious about designing processes that allow for emergence to the right level? And so, yeah, this is where we get concrete with some frameworks to work with. And I won't tell everybody now because that would be a spoiler. However, we do get more practical in this module, deal with some concrete frameworks, do a lot of practice, and learn about ourselves and how we show up with our different energies and our strengths during different kinds of processes.
And when I hear strength, I hear power, right? And power is such a big word, and many facilitators actually shy away from power, or from the concept of power, because we want to lead from the back of the room. We want to be aside and really leave the stage to the participants and the group. And still, it's so important to be aware of our own power and the power dynamics in the space. So this is a very juicy module that will steer up lots of, maybe beliefs and concepts, and maybe challenges for everyone. So that I don't want to spoil too much, but after the power and all this kind of steam, we definitely need to shake it off. Who play?
Shamir?
yeah. And this is the powerful one in a playful way, because it's not only getting into play, understanding and experiencing it, but understanding the value of it. But then once we see it, how do we then actually design for play? How do we then but not just play as a game or a process, but the mindset of play, which is the experimentation, the reflection, the iteration part of it, and build that as a practice going ahead. But really understanding, and this is where Kate already told us a bit about this, which was the magic circle. We talk about what people are coming into the room with, what are the expectations, then how do we design for that around play, so that we often have this, I love to play in sessions, but I'm not sure how this will land with this group. I'm not sure how I can get them. That's really talks about getting concrete about understanding that whole journey of transformation that can happen with play, and really understanding those stages and how we take people through that stage, which by actions that serve the purpose, serve the people that are there, serves the power, and all these other things, and the process. So this play is really that point where we start to see the intersections or interplay of all these different modules, really bring it together, but then also understand why it's so important and very critical to leadership. But we often do not think about it, or we think it as being very trivial.
And the big final closing practice. It's not even mentioned here. But this is where the participants can then practice what they've learned over the past 6 weeks. And not only practice all of the different design parts and process and power and presence, but also how to co-facilitate, which is a very juicy topic that we'll explore in 2 weeks in a LinkedIn Live. Yeah. So, we'll start May 7th and have 3 tiers, and until the 5th of April, until after Easter, we have a 15% discount. Basically, the experience is the course plus a live Q&A that happens every week after the course, which is basically a sort of group coaching. And then if you tune it a little bit down, if you don't have time to attend the full 3 hours workshop training every week plus 1.5 hours Q&A, then you can also just opt out of the Q&A and go with the basic tier. And if the Q&A is not enough, then you can opt for the full immersion, which is actually an amazing opportunity, because you will have weekly one-on-one coaching sessions, 30 minutes with each one of us at your own time, in your own schedule.
And if you want to continue with the theme of Emergence, and we talk about how this fits in this particular structure that we've built, here in this course, right in the middle, we have the deep dive, which is the live courses and the Q&A. You are experiencing, as we talked about before, the content, yes, but then also through that experience that you have with others, there are situations where a lot of things emerges from participants' own, your learners, your fellow peers, their experiences of how they've learned. And that makes the learnings much more richer. But that Q&A, you have time between the Q&A for things to emerge, for your own questions that you have, challenges that you are seeing about it to come. And that's really where that space is for you to emerge with your questions, with those answers. And then the Q&A is a much more emergent space than the live course itself, where you can ask those questions, you can get thoughts from others in the room, but also from our own experiences, how we have dealt with that. And then if you're still eager and you have the energy for that own emergence that happens, throughout this course, there is a transformation journey that's happening. There is a inside self-talk that's happening. There is a question of, why do I show up in this way? And that's where the coaching part of it is. Not just the content and understanding it, but how do you sit with you? And that's where we allow for emergence again in the coaching part of it, which is the full immersion, one-on-one coaching that you'll have with each 5 of us. You'll have a good amount of time with each of us. So just, that sparked me when I saw this. I thought I wanted to talk about that for a bit.
Well said. Bravo.
So jump over to neverdonebefore.org/courses and select not the foundations of facilitation, leadership through facilitation. Oops.
It's emerging, everyone. Oh,
And how do I close this now?
I think if you go to the last one, it'll, yeah, exactly.
yeah, there we go.
I
So
can pop that in the comments.
yes, thanks, Flora. So before we go, any burning questions on anyone's mind
From the audience.
from the audience?
Looking forward.
I think
Yes. Thanks, Flora. I have one question for each of you, which is, when you are in the fire as a checkout, 2 cents. When you are in the fire, when you're standing there in this emergence, in the groan zone, or whatever you want to call it, how do you keep yourself present? I won't even say calm, because you don't necessarily need to be calm, but how do you keep yourself present and with the right energy?
I have this thing that my mom used to say to me, which is go to your feet. And it's a sort of expression where when you feel overwhelmed or when you know you need to stay anchored when somebody's telling you something difficult, in your head you go to your feet. So I tell myself, go to your feet. And then whether I'm sitting down or standing up, it sort of helps me to. And yeah, so that's my trick. It's all the trick. Focus.
It's gorgeous, Laura. Thanks, Laura. Mom.
Quote it on a LinkedIn Live, Mom.
Hi, Mom. Yes. Miriam or Shamira?
I think similar. Breathing and grounding, and I think there is a lot in the embodiment of upright position, breathing in, relaxing, and finding confidence. Maybe a little bit of power posing. Thank you, Amy Cuddy. It's really exciting.
And for me, I think there's definitely the elements of breathing and being calm. But I know my mind. It's going to keep churning and keep cogs turning, because I'm always trying to find the why behind it, try to understand it better. And so that's when I've started telling myself, okay, what's the purpose of what we're trying to do here? What is the power we have? What are these things, these different elements? There are all these modules that keep showing up, right? But it's really about, and if this is the case that we're dealing with, then what do I need to do now? Then that's when the calm automatically comes. And I think that works for me because of the person I am naturally. And maybe it doesn't fit everyone, but it fits for me, and that's what works. So having that sort of conversation in my head, going back, tying down to all these things, and this is why we're showing up, and that helps to, if not the calm, but it helps to stand in the fire and understand what needs to be done, then be present fully at that moment.
Coming back to purpose. Yes, thank you. I have a specific breathing pattern that I learned when I was overcoming my phobia of flying. Love it. Love all those chemicals that come up to calm me down. And also I have a mantra, which I don't know if I really believe, but it makes me smile every time I say it. I heard it from a social justice facilitator in the US, which is, I am the grace and light of the divine. And if I, just by saying it to myself, it makes me smile and brings me back down to earth. So
Beautiful. Beautiful, Kate. Thank you.
thank you, everybody, for being here, for your wisdom.
Thank you.
We'll see everybody on May 7th.
Absolutely. That would be great. Bye.
Bye.